Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing today? Welcome to podcast number 6 of Stop Being Invisible in our new format here on YouTube. And here I am. I am Dr. Ingrid. I'm here with Dr. Lane. Dr. Lane, the chaos continues. I feel like every week I say, what a crazy week. And it's been a couple of weeks for us. We've been a little bit busy. But here we are. And I don't think much has changed. Dr. Lane, what do you say?
No, I would say, it's pretty even keel. We're hit with something different every 5 minutes. It's like every time you turn around, it's like, you're in a boxing match. You're getting hit from one side with something, hit from the other side. You just don't know how to respond, and then you forget about the first punch and you've got another one coming in at you. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
it's
you told me, I didn't know this, everybody, but Dr. Lane told me April is Stress Awareness Month. Are we aware of how stressed we are? I feel like we are very aware of our stress lately. It's been sky high for me. I don't know about you, Dr. Lane. What do you say?
it
You're
has.
real
I
stressed
was
this week,
in
right?
fact, I was actually rushed to the hospital, last week, as I think you said you're a member
Yes.
of your family was also,
Yep.
for stress related high blood pressure and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
So this is, I mean, we are in stressful times, and I think everybody is at the point of
Yeah.
just ready to just lose it, and I don't think that's the way we should be as a society.
And we have been doing this for a long, long time. And I have to tell you, Dr. Lane, I don't think I've ever not post IDEA. I have never lived times like what we're living right now, post IDEA. Um, I certainly thought that post ADA, things were definitely moving forward for those of you who are watching us for the first time. IDA is the law of the land when it comes to um, children with disabilities and their education and their right to free, appropriate public education, their right to FAPE. It's the law of the land.
Right.
And that was signed in 1974, 1975, can't remember right now. 1974, actually, December 1974. So I don't know. All of my life, pretty much, I've been dealing with the evolution of IDA. 1990, we had the American with Disabilities Act, so we kept moving forward.
Right.
We kept iterating PL 94 PL 94 142, which is IDEA or IDEA, um, the law for that protects educational rights for children with disabilities. I don't think I've ever seen an assault on that of this magnitude. I think it's the first time that I can say to myself, all right, where do we move from here? And if I'm confused, and I know you're confused, Dr. Lane, I can't imagine how all of our listeners out there, how much confusion you may be dealing with at the moment.
That I'm sure they're like us. We just don't know which way to turn, and especially for you with your brother,
Yes.
and how it's going to impact your mother who's taking care of, your brother,
Yeah.
and where this is going to lead, you know,
Right.
if they don't get the checks, if they don't get these, supplemental aid and all that kind of stuff, this could be a real problem for people.
Right.
Now, you know, I do remember when there was separation of those students. There was no free appropriate public education, which is, education as close as possible with your peers. I mean, we've talked on the other podcasts. So, if you're joining us for the first time, I'll share this story. I can remember going to school, seeing buses of students. We'd all get off the bus. They would disappear. We wouldn't see them again, not even during lunchtime. We wouldn't see them till the end of school when we all got back on our buses. And those were, what I assume, because at that time I was too young to know, but I'm assuming now that those were students with special needs that they just weren't even integrated into the school system.
They went to the basement.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was perfectly legal and perfectly okay to separate children, regardless of their need level. It was perfectly okay, to keep your children home if you didn't feel like they need an education. Um, now they have just as much of a right to an education, and they've had since 1974, as their normally developing peers.
yes.
So, um,
And
there's
I
a
think the
lot
big
to
thing
be
about that
said.
is, sorry, Dr. I think the big thing about that, it has to be a meaningful education, not just doing something that's, time filler. It has to be a meaningful and purposeful education for these students. Hopefully, they'll get a job in the future. And I think that's kind of what we're advocating for. We're trying to help parents understand that that's the kind of education their children should get. Something that's going to provide them a promising education where they can maybe do some kind of a job, maintain a job, maybe have independence on their own, not have to be taken care of all the time.
And I
And
mean, I think like we're gonna go back to the word that we always talk about in this podcast, which is, we provide these services so that there's equity. And what you're talking about, Dr. Lane, is equity. Basically, okay, it's all right if you need someone to transcribe notes for the first 2 years that you go to school until you catch up with the other students. It is okay if you need an hour and a half instead of an hour to complete a test. Um, if that gives you what you need to be able to complete your education so that you have a role in the future, you have a place in this world. What we want is for everybody to have a place in this world. Everybody, we were talking about this before, Dr. Lane, about, how much we had to fight for society to have this social model of disability, right? And part of it entails understanding that someone with a disability is born in this society. We don't need to include them. We don't need to give them, have any charity with them. We don't need to treat them like they're sick. Um, we just need to understand that they are born into the society. They didn't ask to be here just as much as you, Dr. Lane, or me asked to be here. They're just born here. And as such, they deserve to be members, full members of the society. But it is on us, the non-disabled majority, to be able to provide for provide for a society that includes everybody. For example, for somebody that's trying to access a building.
right, yes.
And
Hmm.
the only reason, they're in a wheelchair. The only reason that we see that disability is if we don't provide them with a ramp or a way to enter the building. If every building had a ramp and a good one, not the one in the back of the building,
Yeah, right.
right?
Because you have
If
to walk through the
every
kitchen to
building
get to
had
the
a
restaurant,
ramp,
right? Hmm.
right? And we all got used to seeing that, it will be entirely normal. It will be part of society for buildings to have ramps. And having to use a wheelchair to access the building would be no problem whatsoever. It's a societal issue. It's a problem in society. So that's disability as a function of society. And what we're seeing these days, I'm not sure if at this time we had a video that we have been
Yes.
watching, Dr. Lane
Let's,
and I, of Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. And sometimes I have to say, like, she seems like very pleasant woman who's being tasked with this impossible task of offloading, transferring all of the Department of Education's responsibilities to, I want to say, other agencies, but now it looks like it's another agency. Let's maybe listen to her, and then
sure.
Dr. Lane, maybe you can explain to us what will go into
Okay.
um
Yeah.
this dismantling and transferring if that were to happen. So just
Sure.
give us 1 second until I can access this and share with you. Here we are.
Corporate model without a plan. We are extraordinarily grateful to the secretary that she joined us. Thank you. She's here. Perhaps I should give her the podium. My biggest concern is that the states will not be able to protect the programs and services that you would like to devolve with them. Best education is that is closest to the child. I'm gonna let them answer the questions. I just wanted to come out and have no, because when are you gonna shut down this building? Well, we've had our discussions already, so thank you all very, very much for coming. Do not have a plan. So they are de facto restructuring this entity along a corporate model without a plan and without an effort to really protect our students. So we want to be clear about that. I want to say one other thing. The mood in the room, it was very collegial. We are extraordinarily grateful to the secretary that she joined us. Thank you. She's here. Perhaps I should give her the podium. We're extraordinarily grateful that the secretary gave us the space to have these conversations. But with all due respect, madam, I think my biggest concern is that the states will not be able to protect the programs and services that you would like to devolve with them.
And I want to stop for a minute here because this is what we've been talking about all along about the states now being able to support the services that the Department of Education currently supports.
Dr. Ingrid, I think a lot of our followers, at least on my, behalf, I'm hearing a lot of them that, ask for an explanation of how what's the administration's intended plan. And again, that was one of the questions that was asked her, when are you going to close the schools? And I think he meant Department of Education when he said that. And she refused to answer it.
Yeah.
She just
Let's
like, yeah.
and let's listen to what she had to say here.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. And I just want to express my gratitude to all of these folks who came today so that we can have an open discussion about what I believe is one of the most important things that we can have a discussion on or action on in our country, and that is the education of our young people. As Representative Tanako said as we were ending the meeting, which I thought was incredibly appropriate, and that is that this is not a partisan issue. This is about the children of America. And it's the next generation, the generation after that. And if we want to have our leaders, if we want to have that next group of engineers and doctors and lawyers and plumbers and electricians and HVAC operators, then we need to focus on how they can best have their education. And I believe, and I know the president does believe this as well, the best education is that is closest to the child, where teachers and parents, local superintendents, working together and local school boards to develop the curriculum for those students is the best way that it can happen. Funding from the United States government will continue through the programs that have already been established, and I will look forward to continuing to work with members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, and I welcome the fact that these folks came today and expressed their concerns and shared in an open collegial format their concerns and how we can lead now to work more together. That's the way it ought to operate, and I'm very happy to have had them here. So I'm gonna let them answer the questions. I just wanted to come out and have. Can you just answer the question? When are you going to shut down this building? Well, we've had our discussions already. So thank you all very, very much for coming. As you see, she's not answering the question when she's going to shut down the Department of Education. She doesn't have a plan. And while she doesn't have a plan, they're continuing to look at firing people, reduction in RIFs, a reduction in force, maybe, doing it with a velvet glove, but still has the effect of an iron fist. Dismantling the Department of Education. Dismantling.
And there you have it. And that's from the Economic Times. That was taken from C-SPAN, from what I can see. So there we go. I mean, I agree with her, but I don't think she's changing anything. Sure, the president, education is local already. Education is close to our children. It's very, that's why we have district school boards. Each district has their own school board, their own superintendent. Um, Education is very, very local. The issue that we have is for programs that depend on federal oversight and federal funding, such as Title I and the education of students with disabilities. The programs that are most funded by the Department of Education. And are I even though I agree with the statement that she just said, I I am left really worried about the lack of a plan. If there's no plan to how we're gonna do it, then how are we gonna do it? Dr. Lane, you did a little digging this
Yeah,
week
yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yes, as a matter
Could
of
you
fact,
tell
yes,
us?
as a matter of fact, I did. I'm going to read this because I don't want to
Yeah.
misrepresent what I was able to find. Across the United States, the Department of Education historically has been a major support system for more than 9 million students with disabilities. That's 9 million with an M. Okay? The Department of Education enforces something our listeners have heard us mention frequently, and that is IDEA. Everyone can say that out loud. The Individuals with Disabilities
Yes.
Education Act, they should have heard it enough,
Million times.
a million times, but you'll continue to hear us talk about that because it is important. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the Department of Education also works to protect students' civil rights. And who's going to do that? Who is going to be responsible it looks like it's going to HHS, Health and Human
That's what it looks
Services.
like.
Yeah. And, when that happens, that's going to cause a problem also. Because again, I'm going to read directly what this is going to happen. The proposed transfer, implementation, and oversight of special education to the HHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, would cause a major issue. The reason I say that is that the Department of Education has statutory authority to implement and enforce IDEA. Again, the Department of Education has statutory authority to implement and enforce IDEA. It would take an act of Congress giving HHS authority. If they fail to have an act of Congress giving authority to HHS, it would prevent IDEA from ever being enforced at all.
Right.
So we're going to lose total enforcement of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act unless Congress gives that authority through an act of Congress, excuse me, to HHS.
And we all know what happens, like if you have a law in the books, but it's not being enforced.
Right.
It
Disappears.
Yeah, it disappears. It's a de facto disappearance of the law. There are so many laws in the books that nobody ever enforces. So that's why, I don't know, there is some like weird laws in the books that are not being enforced. I can't really name any of them, but I'm sure if you Google them, you will know. But they're not being enforced. So it's as if you had no law at all. So and then I'm really concerned about the transfer of funding. Like, who's going to manage that funding? I know you also, like, you were talking about the fact that HHS is also being, they experience firings and
Yes.
defunding across all of their sub agencies. Um, I know there were 20,000 people well, there were 10,000 people that were offered retirement and
Right.
another 10,000 people that were that were fired. They were talking about needing to hire some people back because, of course, when you do things in such I don't
Reckless
know,
manner.
a reckless way, you don't really pay attention. You don't, this is the kind of thing. I remember when I was going to the seamstress and I was getting my dress down as a mother of the bride,
Right.
the seamstress would say, measure twice, in my case, three times, cut once. I measure so many times so before I cut, because once I cut, that's it.
Right. Hmm.
And this is almost like cut, 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 then measure, and then figure out how you're going to piece it back together.
And I think they're not realizing the impact that this impact of these cuts. It's actually impacting real people.
Yeah,
It's not just a job title. It is actually people who have to pay mortgages, have to feed their family, other things, have a car, those kind of
yeah.
things. I mean, I know of a friend who was actually an IT person, and he lost his job with the government. And right after he lost his job, he committed suicide. So
Wow.
this is the impact these cuts are having on people, and they're not looking at society's best interest when they're making the cuts.
And just think about all the trickle down effects of that would have, right? I was telling you before, like if my brother loses benefits, which he stands to lose because, like we've been saying, the 880 billion uh dollar budget cut to Medicaid is heading to Congress right now. It was approved in the Senate. Very few Republicans opposed it. I believe Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and a couple of other people. Um, but the budget itself, the whole package, I believe Susan Collins and Rand Paul,
Right. Yes.
I
Hmm.
believe, only opposed. But that means it's heading to Congress, where it will most likely get approved. And that means that that's going to the committee to see, okay, so we got to slash $880 billion out of Medicaid. Where are we going to take this from? Um, Most likely are, people like my brother, they're going to feel the impact of that. What's going to happen? Maybe I need to cut some hours. If they cut hours out of this program, I may need to cut hours from my work. What's going to happen is I'm going to pay less taxes. The less I work, the less taxes I pay. It is it's a never ending cycle.
Right.
It, one thing leads to another, leads to another. It's a never ending cycle. So nobody wins.
Right. No,
Nobody wins.
a perfect example along, pretty much along your lines is that, I had a speech language pathologist call me, and because they're cutting these programs back, she's losing, going to be losing her income.
Yes.
And she, was interested, wanted to know if I was interested in, employing her as kind of like somebody to work for when I, need an evaluation or something,
Right.
because it's impacting her. And people don't realize that once you cut these programs, it's affecting everybody,
Yeah.
in the triangle or,
Yeah.
so yeah.
I was just at a meeting, and there was from New York, as I've said before, and there was an assembly person present. And we were talking about what can we do to shield our state from these cuts. And he said, you can't. There are certain things that that we are going to feel the impact. Um, there was a person there who said, now if the department, if the federal government stops giving New York money, can New York refuse money to the federal government?
Right.
Because states also provide the government with money. I don't know about Delaware, but I know in New York State pays more to the federal government than it receives. But it needs to receive that portion back. Otherwise, it's kind of like people who file taxes and they overpaid
Sure.
and they get
Hmm.
some back. We, as New York, obviously never get what we pay. Um,
So,
yeah, which is where, like you hear certain states pay for other states. It's because, we have a higher degree of taxation and we believe in equity. We actually do. We believe that, yeah, a child in New York is just It's worth just as much as a child in
Right.
Mississippi.
Right.
Doesn't make a difference. We believe in education for all children. We believe in equity. And Dr. Lane and I, we've been doing equity work our entire lives. Uh, so like, yes, we would never ever complain about this, but we are here to let you know about what the federal government is doing to curtail some of these services that everyone, red states, blue states, all gonna feel the impact from. So is there any positive message you wanna, Dr. Lane, leave our
I have an article
viewers
from
with?
Disability Scoop, but we'll talk about that on the next podcast. How's that? And let's just, let me wrap up, and I hope I can speak for you when I say this. You know, having a high quality education for all children would not occur, but push it further, like I talked about in previous podcasts, about some students in my elementary school were being educated in the basement. We can't let that happen. We have to stop that. And I know both you and I agree that our learners need hope and someone with educational experiences to support them in these troubling and uncertain times. We hope that through these podcasts, we are able to provide a guiding light as this administration continues to ignore the law and challenge courts' authority to stop them. But
Yes.
we are here.
No,
We are here
we
to
are
help.
here. We're not going anywhere. I think if I had to provide a positive thought for the end of this recording, it would be we are here. We're not going anywhere. Dr. Lynn and I will be here for you. We're gonna try to explain as much as we can what we know about the law and what we know is happening so that you can make sense of what this is and how you can apply it to your family and to your child's education. So that
And,
that's our message for today.
yeah, and
As
I think
always,
we've done a pretty good job of it, because when we first started, we talked about talking to the representatives, and now a lot of the um, representatives are not having town meetings with their constituents
you
anymore. In fact,
keep doing it.
I heard in the news this
Keep
morning
doing
that
it.
Susan Collins hasn't met with her main
Constituent.
conglomerate in
Wow.
over 25 years. So yeah.
Wow.
hmm So I think that we're starting to have an impact. We saw it this weekend with the hands off marches.
Mhm.
So we are providing them help. We're providing them support, and continue to give us your feedback, because we'd love to hear it. We'd love to hear where you want us to take these next podcasts.
Yes. So remember, if you have any questions for us, any comments, anything, just give us your feedback, leave a comment here. We will read it, we'll answer you, and we will try to address it in a future podcast. We'll try to get these to you once a week. I think we should be able to do it next week for you. I'm sure we'll have more to talk about. We have more that we can get to cover here, but there's so much that there's never
Never
there's
enough
never
time.
enough
We
time.
could talk 24 hours a day for all 7 days, and I don't think we could cover everything, Dr. Ingrid.
Yes, yes. All right, everyone. And with that, we will leave you here, and we will see you again for our next podcast. You guys have a wonderful day or night
Yep.
whenever you're listening to us.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.